Finally, we've got an Islander writer, an Islander disciple. No more Ranger guys, no more Vegas night guys or Canadian guys. We've got an Islander guy on with us. I'm very excited because now we can talk a little bit of Islanders hockey. We are now talking to Islanders blog and Empire Sports media writer, Rob Taub. What's going on, Rob?
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm very excited to have you on, especially that you're an Islander guy. The last couple of weeks, we've been getting on a lot of Ranger writers, and Ranger writers like to shut down the New York Islanders on where the Islanders are going to go this year, that the Islanders were very lucky that they came back from COVID and went as far as they did to the Eastern Conference Championship, and they got their asses beaten by the Lightning, and there was a reason why they got their asses beaten by the Lightning, because they weren't that good. So I'm excited to get you on. Rob, how are you and your family doing with this pandemic?
Everyone's doing good. My mom and grandma actually did have COVID 2 months ago, but they fought through that. I tested negative 3 times, but yeah, everyone's hanging in there. It's just a crazy time.
The story really going into the season was Matthew Barzal. He gets a 3-year deal worth about $7 million a year. The one thing that really bothers me about this 3-year contract was the fact that they didn't sign him to a 5 or 6 or 7-year deal. You want to make sure you hold on to your superstar player. And now you're thinking about in the next 3 years, if the Islanders do not win, or they're not one of those teams that you're going to be talking about where they can lose into free agency. What were your thoughts when the Islanders signed Matthew Barzal to a 3-year, $7 million a year contract?
I was happy that they got him locked up. I know that they were looking for a long-term deal, and because of the whole cap situation, they couldn't make it happen. He was ready to sign a 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 year deal from what I heard. But no, I was very, very ecstatic to see him sign. I thought the number that they got him at was very good. And I thought the years, look, 3 years from now, he'll be a restricted free agent again. And then, if a team wants to offer sheet him, they're going to have to give the Islanders or him $8.5 million and compensation. So I think it comes out as a great deal for both sides. But yeah, I was very happy to see him sign. I thought people were taking the whole contract dispute a little bit too far. With Lou Lamoriello running the team the way he has the past few years, it's like nothing really leaks out. And a lot of people, when it comes to Islander fans, like we're a little skittish when it comes to like contract negotiations or whatever, because we saw what happened with the John Tavares saga, and we don't want to see that happen again. But I was very, very happy to see him sign, and now it's on him to, live up to that contract and become a star. And I think he's on his way there.
Barzal had 19 goals last season, which I think was a little down from what a lot of Islanders fans expected. One, do you think that maybe factored into why you might have not gotten $8 or $9 million, a little more than that at the start of last season, like a lot of people were thinking? And also, what do you think he has to improve on to improve that goal total?
I don't think that really played a part in it. I think that when it comes to him and scoring goal, he's just the guy who he wants to be the playmaker. He doesn't want to be the shooter. And the Islanders have, I've written about it over and over again at length that they've lacked scorers for the past few years. That's really the only thing that's keeping them back from being an elite team. Not saying they aren't almost there now, but you saw in the playoffs where they were lacking and they couldn't hang with Tampa and all their big guns. But when it comes to Barzal, I think it's more he just doesn't shoot enough. I've been saying it ever since he came to the league. He's got a great shot too. I've watched every single game he's played. And I could see it when he has the puck on his stick. He's a magician, but he doesn't like to always shoot. He always wants to be the facilitator, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you mentioned the 19 goals. He's the kind of guy who I would thought would have been a 30-goal scorer by now. He has that type of ability, has that type of talent. You can make the argument that he hasn't had the players around him that can make him, elevate him the way people think he should be. But he's the star. He's supposed to elevate the other guys. Or he's supposed to elevate his teammates. And he has, in a sense. He's done it. But I think this year, we're going to see a different I think we're going to see a more focused Matthew Barzal. I think you're going to see a guy with maybe a more shooter's mentality, because the Islanders offense, it's still not where it needs to be, but they do have pieces. But Barzal, he's the guy that runs through, and he's got to be the one that takes charge this year.
The Islanders have a great young team. They have a lot of good young players coming up this year. Oliver Wahlstrom, Noah Dobson. We've been hearing about Noah Dobson, the growth of who he was in the playoffs last year, taking over the way he did, and really strategically what Barry Trotz likes to do. Is there a player this season that you're looking forward to watching that stands out to you going into the season?
It's got to be Anthony Barzal. He's got star written all over him also. We saw in the playoffs, he was a monster, and he had a motor going. And I know he slowed down a little bit toward the end, but this is the kind of guy where I mentioned about the offense before. He's got to be the one that steps up. He really, really has to. He's going into a contract there also, and he's going to be looking to make some coin next off season. But he's one of those guys that for the past few years, it's always been about consistency. And he hasn't been able to keep up that consistency to the point where you can depend, where the team can depend on him to be an offensive force. That's got to change this year. He's the guy. Everyone is expecting big things out of him. You can even say he might be the X factor for this team this year. If you're not going to go with Barzal or Ryan Pulock or whoever, Barzal, he's going to be the guy everyone's looking for because he's the top six. He's in the top six, and he's solidified. He's a top six forward. But he's got to be consistent. Consistency is the key for him this year. And yeah, he's my guy to look for.
So what about the goalies? What do you think the split will be like now with Sorokin coming there? Very good goalie prospect, should be fantastic. And also Semyon Varlamov, who was up and down at times last year, but was very good in the playoffs.
Corey Schneider too.
And Corey Schneider in the mix as well.
Corey Schneider he'll be on the taxi squad most likely, but I don't see him getting that many games unless Varlamov or Sorokin either get hurt or just play very badly.
Yeah. So what do you think the splits will be like? And what percentage, maybe how much do you think Sorokin will have more Varlamov?
I'm not sure. Based on what Barry Trotz said, he's going to try and ease Sorokin into the NHL basically because he hasn't played a game yet. And I'm hoping, I think we'll see him sometime within the next week. I wrote that earlier today. But when it comes to the splits, the way the Islanders have been the past few years too, when it comes to their goalies and the way Trotz has employed them is he likes to split them. Whoever's got the hot hand, he goes with. So I can see Varlamov is the starter. That's already confirmed. But I think if he struggles, I think Sorokin could definitely garner more games than him. But the split, if they split the season halfway, then you know that the Islanders are either in a good place or a bad place. But I don't know. I'm hoping that we can see a little bit more Sorokin because he is the future in net. And that's nothing against Semyon Varlamov because he was phenomenal in the playoffs. And now this is his second year with the team. And I think he's probably a little bit more comfortable. He probably knows Trott's system and the way, his defense is going to play in front of him. But yeah, I'd like to see Sorokin maybe get a few more starts because he is the future. And, he's the guy everyone's looking to be the goaltender for the next, 10 to 15 years, hopefully. But I think if they get I could see an even split. But it depends on who has the hot hand.
Now, Barzal was traded to the New York Islanders at the trade deadline. A lot of Islander fans were very surprised. They gave up a first and a second-round draft pick, and they didn't really have a first or second-round draft pick this year. And a lot of Islander fans didn't realize how talented of a player he was until he was in the playoffs, and he was one of the leading scorers, not only for the Islanders in the NHL playoffs. Are you surprised that Barzal is as good as he is? And do you think now that he's playing a full season with the New York Islanders, do you think he's going to break out a 40-goal scorer this year?
I think 40 goals is asking a lot because it's only a 56-game schedule. I mean, if he could hit 20, that'd be a hell of a season. But no, we've been hearing about how good he was going back to when he was with Ottawa, and I remember watching him in the playoffs against the Rangers a few years back, and he was just an all-out beast. And he basically helped win Ottawa that series in the few games that they were were up and down affairs. But I think Islander fans knew just how good this guy was going to be. We saw it from the minute he joined the team when he fought Jacob Trouba after he knocked out Michael Del Cole in the first game against the Rangers last year. It was Barzal's first game as an Islander. You knew that they had something special. And then it took him a little time to adjust, but then you saw in the playoffs, I mean, this guy, he's a gamer. And I think the Islanders are going to get the most of him this year. And because he's centering the third line, and I tweeted it last week, you put the Islanders center depth against anyone in the league, and they could be one of the top in the league. They've got 4 very quality, really good centers, and Barzal just adds to that. But I think he's going to have a big year. I think because he's centering the third line, and that line was like a dark hole last year for production. I think that's where he's going to thrive, and basically he's going to have that whole little area all to himself.
So what about the young players that are right on the borderline that we've seen? Kiefer Bellows made the roster, as did Wahlstrom. It was announced today, but also guys like
two great young players, by the way.
I remember. I'm a Ranger fan. I wanted them to draft Wallstrom really badly in that draft. So
I remember.
So
side story, I remember that because I remember Ranger fans were crying when they didn't pay, and they could have also had Casey Middlestat. Those were two guys. I remember Ranger fans. You guys are crying big time, but look where you are now.
Yeah. So some of those players, all in addition to guys like Del Cole, like you mentioned earlier, Josh Hosang, who's been up and down due to his issues. What do you think about those young players, like those players that are on the borderline with the ones that have made the roster now and also, again, throughout the season too?
I think they need to make an impact. And based on what Trott said this morning, he sees that Wahlstrom and Bellows they'll both get time. Mostly you'll probably see them on the third line unless they just explode out of nowhere. Then who knows what happens. I mean, Bellows and Wahlstrom are both projected to be top six forwards, but the way that they've developed so far, I see more Wahlstrom having a slighter edge toward that. But no, I'm very excited to see what they have in store. I mean, these are the guys we've been hearing about for a while now, especially Bellows. I mean, we got to see him for a short stint last year, and he made an impact. Same thing with Wahlstrom, except Wahlstrom didn't score, and that's his bread and butter. He's got one of the best releases of probably any prospect in the league. But I think they're going to bring something different to this lineup. I think they're going to bring a skill set to this lineup that the Islanders maybe lack a little bit. They don't have a lot of skill. They're more of the heavy based team, and there's only so many guys you can name off the top of your head that have the skill that maybe the league has turned to in terms of that. But no, I think they're going to be good. They're going to be good players this year, and I think they're going to make an impact.
The Islanders have one of the most underrated first-line defensive pairings in the NHL, Ryan Pulock and Pelech. Were you surprised that Pelech was as important as he was to the Islanders when he came back after his Achilles injury and then come back and the Islanders just completely miraculously became that top talented defensive team that we saw in the beginning of the season? Were you surprised when Pelech came back that he was the big reason why that defense was as good as they were in the playoffs?
I'm not surprised. Going back to the previous playoffs against Pittsburgh, and even just shortly before that, right before the All-Star game 2 seasons ago, there was a game where Adam Pelech was scratched against the New York Rangers. And after that, it was in early January. The Islanders lost that game. After that, he wasn't scratched the rest of the season. And he just evolved. He really, really evolved. So when you ask me if I knew how important he was going to be going last year, yeah. I mean, and he's even more important going into this year. Now that Devon Taves is gone, I mean, a lot of guys and Johnny Boychuk is basically he's basically retired. A lot of guys are gonna have to pick up the slack. But Pelech, yeah, he's underrated, but he can be a household name. Same thing with Ryan Pulock. I saw that he was on the Athletics top 100 players list, which was very surprising to me. But that's a duo that can really, really make some noise this year. And the Islanders are going to really, really need them because, who knows what we're going to get? Who knows what you're going to get from Noah Dobson full season? You got other guys who might be shuffling in and out of that into that defensive core, those corps. But no, they're extremely important to the success. And I wasn't surprised with how good he was when he came back in the bubble. It was night and day compared to what the Islanders were dealing with when he was gone. And they're a different team without him, but they're a worse team without him.
I think Noah Dobson's going to be a star, by the way. He is a fantastic player, unbelievable skater, long, big, strong. He's young. He's a little wet behind the ears, but when this kid figures things out, this guy is going to be one of the best defensive players in the NHL.
I would temper my expectations because it's going to be his first season, but we saw last year he's got a calmness about him, and he's got a cool hand Luke a little bit type of mentality, and he's not afraid to get in on the offense, and he looked sharp, he looked good defensively when he was given his time, and then that last game in the playoffs against Tampa Bay, he looked like he belonged. So I think the Islanders are expecting big things out of him, and I totally agree with you. I think he's going to be a stud. Right now, it's just seeing how he progresses, especially playing with Andy Green, who basically is like he's going to be his mentor this year. And that pairing going back to before they entered the bubble was supposedly one of the best they had going in. And now it seems like they're going to be paired again this year. So it should be fun to see what those two have in store. But yeah, Dobson, he's one of the bigger ones to watch this year, and he'll be a stud.